Hello, I'm Jake Boudreau, civic journalist at Tello Community Television. This week, on The Record, I attended the regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council in Arishat on December 16th. After the meeting, I spoke with Warden Lois Landry and Deputy Warden Brent Sampson. At the start of the meeting, donations were handed out to food banks across Richmond County.
We're going to take a minute to not only present checks to our local food banks, but more importantly to recognize the critically important work that these organizations do. On behalf of Council and all of Richmond County's residents, please accept our heartfelt thanks for those contributions over the last year and moving forward, particularly as we move through the Christmas holidays. So talk's cheap, takes money to buy stuff. So we're going to take a minute to present some checks and take a few photos while we're doing that. So I'll begin by calling from District 1 and 2, the Isle Madame Food Bank, Paul Boudreau. From District, I guess 3, Blair Landry is here from Loosedale. Oh, Brian, sorry. From District 5, Sally Mumbercat and Steve Sampson. And accepting on behalf of the St. Peters and Area Food Bank Society, Amanda Mumbercat. And unfortunately, the representative from Baudelaire couldn't be with us, so Deputy Warden Sampson will make sure that they get theirs.
Maybe we'll talk about the DQ needed this time of year, to help out these organizations that help a lot of people.
Yeah, food banks are an unfortunate it's unfortunate that anybody needs any food. The most basic thing, food and shelter, that we need in order to get through every day, but it's especially challenging for families at Christmas time. And so the municipality and those of us who sit around this table, and I think residents in general, are always going to be supportive of anything we do to support our most vulnerable residents.
In the Committee of the Whole report, Council approved a motion to have Destination Cape Breton administer the Cape Breton Island Tourism Marketing Levy. Council also approved a motion requesting 4 years of financial statements from Destination Cape Breton.
So then we will move on to those committee reports. So we have 3 committee reports to review this evening. I'll turn it over to Deputy Warden Sampson for the Committee of the Whole report.
The committee discussed the designation of Destination Cape Breton Association to administer the Cape Breton Island Marketing Levy. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to designate Destination Cape Breton Association as the administrator of the marketing levy for Richmond County.
Motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mumbercat to recommend Council CAO be directed to request financial statements for the past 3 to 4 years from Destination. Oh, I'm sorry, the one before that. Committee of the Whole recommend Council to designate Destination CB Association as the administrator of the marketing levy for Richmond County. Any question on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request for the Destination Cape Breton Association financial statements. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the CAO be directed to request the financial statements for the past 3 to 4 years from the Destination Cape Breton Association.
Motion on the floor. There is a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder?
I'd like to make a motion to amend to remove the words 3, 2. So THREE space TO and leave that at 4.
I believe we specifically said 4. Yeah. So that the motion was 4 years. I remember actually clarifying when you made the motion, when we voted on it. So the motion on the floor is as 3 to 4. So can I have a seconder for that motion? Okay. So seconded by Councillor Sampson, the motion as presented, which is 3 to 4 years. Would you, Councillor Marchand, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to amend to remove the word 3, 2.
So can I have a seconder on the motion to amend? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. So we're going to vote on the amendment. So what we're voting on is to change the original motion to only 4 years, not 3 to 4 years, okay? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion is carried. So now we're going to vote on the original motion with the amendment. So I will read it. I move the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that CAO be directed to request the financial statements for the past 4 years from Destination Cape Breton. Any question on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that motion is carried.
Now, you're talking about Destination Cape Breton's financials. You guys want to look at 4 years' worth of financial statements. Why is it important to get that?
I think last year, couldn't tell you the month, I want to say maybe late spring or maybe a little bit before that, I guess. We as a policy committee, and then it came to council, that we would join the marketing levy program for all accommodations in Cape Breton. So there is a 3% marketing levy when now there are some exceptions to that if you're in a hotel because you have a medical appointment, that kind of thing. But if you are a tourist and you're visiting or traveling on Cape Breton, you pay a 3% marketing levy, and that money goes to Destination Cape Breton. And we are hoping that that money funds some really important programs that drives, more tourism to our accommodations. But it is reasonable, I believe, and it was certainly unanimously agreed upon here at the table, that the financial statements allow us to see how much money are Richmond County accommodations collecting, and what does it look like from the financials where that money is being spent. So we're not asking for confidential information. Most places post this kind of thing online, so we're just looking to see how money that is collected in Richmond County, what it looks like in terms of how that's dispersed.
From the outside looking in, what's your sense on how Destination Cape Breton is doing in promoting Richmond County? What do you feel about how they've done?
I think there has been, so back in 1987, when I was working at what was the old motel, now it's called the Clarestone Inn, before it was the Auberge, when it was just the Arishat Motel, I remember the owner saying, gosh, it feels like tourists are just being told you go up the 105, do the Cabot Trail, and go back the 105. Aside from some golf on Route 19, I think there would still be similar criticism. So that's 1987 to today, 2024. I think we still have some concerns about what more we can do here in Richmond to make sure that the promotion of our accommodations and our tourist sector, particularly in the shoulder seasons, because we got a lot going on here in the shoulder seasons, and also, our ATV, our snowmobiling opportunities here. I think really it gives us an opportunity to have a more in-depth look at what we're doing for all parts of Cape Breton, and if we want to have good discussion about some concerns, I think the financials is a good place to start.
Would Richmond ever consider going it alone if it doesn't like what it sees from the financials?
Oh, I don't think we're interested in going it alone. I think we just want to be able to have good, fulsome discussions about how can we have conversations about, well, what about this and what about that? Being mindful of, we want to respect the amount that we're contributing. We just want to make sure that we can have discussions that sort of speak to how the dollars are coming in and going out.
Also in the Committee of the Whole report, Council voted to approach the NSCC Strait Area campus to see if students can help measure the deer population in the municipality. This will take place before municipal staff get quotes from consultants who can help measure the deer population.
The committee discussed the deer population briefing note update. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that staff be directed to select quotes for the above noted work, deer population briefing note attached.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mumbercat. Question on the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to amend again. I'd like to remove the word select on the second line and put in request I think the initial discussion was using the word select. The motion that got voted on was using the word request. So my motion is to remove the word select or replace the word select with request. And I would also like to add that we have staff speak with NSCC before looking for quotes. So
Yeah, I agree, Councillor Marchand. I think we did definitely land on the request, so I'll second your motion to amend that.
So just to review, there is a motion on the table, and the amendment is to change the word select and replace it with request, and that to add that requesting have staff speak with NSCC and then be directed to, yep, before looking, yep. Okay, so that's the motion for amendment and the seconder on that motion. Do we have any questions on the amendment? No. Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. So can I have the clerk read that, just so that there's no confusion as to what we're voting on? Oh, sorry.
I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that staff be directed to request quotes for the above noted work and to have staff speak with NSCC before looking for quotes.
That's the motion on the floor. That is amended from the original motion. Any question on that motion? Final. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
I wanted to ask about the information that council's asking about with regards to the deer population. And I mean, this has been a problem for a while now. It seems to be on the rise now. What are you hoping to get out of the motion that council passed tonight? And what information are you hoping will help to be able to deal with this in Richmond County right now?
So deer population is really significant. The deer population, when it is not managed properly, can, in some cases, sometimes it can double. Doubling a small number is not a big problem. Doubling a big number is a huge problem. And one of the things that we see in District 2, my neck of the woods, is we certainly see that we don't really have a deer problem, we have a doe problem. And so traditionally, hunting is about hunting bucks, right? So what we're really asking of our provincial departments that are responsible for this, natural resources, we're asking for them to take a look at what tagging system they're using. And so their goal is to make sure that the deer population is managed well, and nobody wants to see the deer population eradicated. It's important that that ecosystem function well. We're not looking to get rid. We also, hunting is an avid thing that we do, and it's not just a sport for us, right? People here eat deer. We have been eating deer since a long time. So it's really important to manage that properly, and Department of Natural Resources counts on science in order to make decisions. So this year they did make some changes. They had a certain number of doe tags. Then they also had a bonus tag system, which was you could catch a buck, and then if you brought your tag in, you could get a doe tag. But what those of us who live in this neck of the woods believe is that that has not been sufficient to bring down the deer population, particularly the doe population. And some of the reasons for that, we believe, are that we don't have people who are hunting as much. So if you have to get a buck, that might actually fill your freezer. And so you don't actually have enough freezer space, or people who are eventually going to eat that second deer. So we would argue that there is additional steps that need to be taken. And in order for DNR to kind of take those steps and start to look at changing the science of how many tags they're going to issue, they need for, sometimes they call it pellet counts or transacts, but there's a whole bunch of things. And the municipality really becomes responsible for flagging to DNR that we need to do things differently. So there are private companies that will do that work for us, and there is an expense to that. There are also NSCC programs that deal with these kinds of things, and we're hoping that we can get some kind of work term co-op placements so that we can get, for $0, we can get that kind of important science information. And make no mistake, there are some really great things happening across the province around the deer population. So the town of Truro already has a deer cull, and that goes, so there's deer tags especially singularly for the cull, and that goes to certified butchers, and all of that meat goes to food banks across the province. And they just voted to do the same in Colchester, around the town. So that was a plebiscite. So we're really just looking to get the science to see what our options are moving forward, and to make sure that the science of how many tags should be issued next year is really solid.
Now, you brought up Truro, and I'm wondering, there were some concerns there that some residents were actually feeding the deer and encouraging them to come around. Do you get the sense that's happening at all in Richmond County, and specifically in Almaden?
I think people who live in urban areas are, I think they probably see deer as a little bit more of a, oh, look, whereas we're used to seeing them every day. There are definitely reports of people who have been feeding deer. However, I would argue that I'm feeding deer every day, and I don't intend to, because of my on-site septic system, which is a peat moss system. So when I have, when it snows, and I have a little trickle of snow, I can tell you there are nose prints in that peat moss because it's warm and there's lots to eat there. So we're luring deer with our gardens, with our septic systems, whether we have people throwing crumbs out to them or not. I think at this point, though, I would say it's not hard to convince folks that we are too far. So we have deer that are too close. We know that deer carry ticks. So we know that they eat there's nobody in my family that didn't have a garden when I was growing up, and I live on my family's neck of the woods. Nobody has a garden where we live unless you can build and maintain a 6-foot fence. So I think we don't have the same kind of problem that Truro does. Not saying we don't have some people, but they're coming to us for other reasons.
You're the warden of the county. Are there reports of this type of activity happening anywhere else around Richmond?
So I think it was always a District 2, like Capel around Poirierville was always sort of and then you saw it kind of expand all the way to Martinique. And then, I mean, there are people who travel to Almaden to do what we call the loop. So you go up by the old credit union in Discouse, and you go around Bona Road, and then you go through Rocky Bay. They're counting upwards of 70 deer, right, as a tourist venture. So what we have seen is that population is now, like, the deer they're not sticking in our neck of the woods, right? They're not District 2 voters, so they're afoot. So we're seeing the population extend into West Arishat, and I can tell you that I have come across several deer, like in front of Claire Rankin's place in St. Peter's. Like, it seems like I'm always running into them, not running into them, but seeing them there. So this is a population that is going to expand beyond the borders of where it's troublesome now.
Sure. How long are you willing to wait to hear back from NSCC, given the scope of the problem, that it's becoming a real problem and actions needed?
Yeah, for sure. And so one of the issues is that they're really, some of this is time specific. So you just can't do these things at any point because you want to catch them at a time. There's really, like, April is our target because, you know, to do it when there's a heavy snowfall and the deer might actually be kind of burrowing in some little small location. So really, we have some time, but our goal is to make sure that everything is in place so it can be done on April 1st. So it really is about making sure that you get the information at the right time that talks about the rutting patterns and the doe population and the fawn population, so that they can make decisions for a fall hunt. Nobody's suggesting, you know, I know with the bears, they looked at a spring hunt. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for a change to next year's fall hunt.
As part of the Committee of the Whole report, Council approved a motion for a fire equipment allocation that would be part of the 2024-2025 budget.
The committee discussed the approved fire equipment reallocation. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to accept the Volunteer Fire Department equipment funding memo from the Emergency Services Coordinator.
Motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
One of the items, I think it was from the Committee of the Whole report, about fire equipment reallocation. And what does that entail?
So what was happening there was some money we had allocated to help with some equipment that a few fire departments were going in on it together. It was to refill air packs, like a unit, basically compressor unit for specifically for breathing air for fire services. So right now what's happening is fire departments, say you end up with a fire or training, you're having to run to Port Hawkesbury to get those filled, and sometimes, if schedules don't line up, that can be, a bit of a pain, and you want to have those tanks filled all the time and as many filled as possible in case you need them, like anything else, right? So what this was they were looking at purchasing some equipment for filling the tanks, as well as some equipment for washing gear, like fire gear. And what happened was they were just reallocating what the money went towards. It was basically the same project, but it was moving it from one item to the other because of how some of the money had come in from elsewhere.
In the report of the Fire Services Protection Committee, Council approved a motion to take out an advertisement in the Richmond Reflections newsletter looking for volunteer firefighters.
Fire Protection Services Committee report. So Councillor Marchand is the councillor who represents us on that committee. So I'll ask Councillor Marchand for to provide us with that report.
Thank you, Warden. The Fire Protection Services Committee report for November 2024. The committee last met on November 27, 2024. The committee discussed the recruitment of volunteer firefighters in Richmond County. I move that the Fire Protection Services Committee recommend to Council to have municipal staff meet with the volunteer fire departments to discuss advertising in the Richmond Reflections for the recruitment of volunteer firefighters in Richmond County.
Motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. Question is to recommend to Council to have municipal staff meet with the volunteer fire departments to discuss advertising in the Richmond Reflections for the recruitment of the volunteer firefighters in Richmond County. Any question on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying, Councillor Marchand, did you have? No. Oh, that's okay. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
Are you concerned that the departments have to advertise to recruit volunteer firefighters? I noticed that came up. You guys are looking to advertise in the Reflections Richmond newsletter. And how great is the need there that there's a need to recruit?
Am I concerned? Yes. What is the need? Dire. And by dire, I mean, I don't want to suggest that people should be fearful tonight that if my house caught fire, there wouldn't be anybody there. Because what we know about our firefighters is that they are probably some of the most dedicated, well, I'm sure they are, the most dedicated volunteers that we have. In order to be a volunteer firefighter, the amount of weekends you have to give up, the amount of training you have to take on an ongoing basis, but particularly as you start and you join the fire departments. And when we look at our population, as the question at the end of tonight, that we do have an aging population. So our firefighters are starting to become older. So, what we have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do if we don't have enough volunteer firefighters? If we don't have enough volunteers at a community hall, we might not have bingo. We might not have a card play. If we don't have enough volunteers in the fire department, what are our options? Nothing good. So I am really concerned. And I'm also concerned that in addition to really important training that these folks have to do, some of them have to work every 30 night at the bingo to keep the place afloat. Like, how can we not all be concerned? There is no more noble a profession than people who put themselves in harm's way for their fellow neighbors. And so we're asking them to do that without real compensation, and we're asking them to, call their own bingo games in order to pay for the things they need to provide that service. So, they do the most important work. It is the hardest work. It is the most trauma-inducing work next to our police force, which is a paid police force. So I am absolutely concerned and cannot speak highly enough of the work that our firefighters do.
Now, you guys are advertising in the Richmond Reflections newsletter for volunteer firefighters. How bad is the need that you guys are having to take out ads, recruiting, looking for people?
So that was at the last Fire Services Committee steering meeting in November. So I'm no longer on that committee, so I wouldn't be able to speak to it directly. But I know that's been an issue, I think, around the province and beyond. It's harder and harder to get people. Some of the departments, though, do have good complement, but others are struggling a little bit more. So what they wanted to do, from what I can understand from this, is just talk to staff about setting something up and putting it in the reflections, just to make people aware, because sometimes it's just a matter of thinking about it.
District 4 Councillor Amanda Mumbriket had council agree to a motion directing municipal staff to investigate the feasibility of phasing in electric and hybrid vehicles in the municipal fleet.
There are a couple of items for us that are verbal in nature, meaning you won't find information about them on the package, but Councillor Mumbriket has brought forth a couple of items with a verbal update for each. The first is the electric vehicles in tendering requirements, which I believe is from a session from the NSFM's fall convention. So, Councillor Mumbriket.
Thank you, Warden. So yeah, no, that's exactly right. In part of some of the discussions at the NSFM conference, the municipality, one municipality shared their experience in looking at electric vehicles as part of their tendering requirements. So as many of you know, this June, the Government of Canada set a mandatory target that all new light-duty cars and passenger trucks will need to be zero emissions by 2035, accelerating Canada's target by 5 years. It's also a priority of the Government of Nova Scotia, and they have the Electrify Nova Scotia rebate program through the Clean Foundation. It was in some of my discussions with the Mayor of Bridgewater, Mayor Mitchell, related to their municipal experiences with EVs. I believe they were one of the first municipalities in Canada, actually, to have an EV as part of their police fleet. And kind of, talked about the purchase of their first Tesla vehicle for their policing services. It didn't seem to be a great fit for what the purpose of what they were using it for. So they switched to a different vehicle, an F-150 Lightning, I believe was the plug-in hybrid vehicle that they went with. And his experience with that, the way he related it, was that it's going really well. And so not only is it saving them in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, but also they're experiencing lower maintenance and operational costs. And I think, from discussing with him, he talked about how, there's an initial additional outlay of money, anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 that you would pay for an EV, or PHEV in particular, but they're saving that or maybe more each year. So the EV as well has a longer lifespan. So overall, those savings are starting to accumulate for them. So it's still early days for them, but they seem to be convinced. And also important to note that in their experience, the EVs that they purchased came with charging stations. So they didn't have to purchase the charging stations separately. So the infrastructure cost was, of course, significantly reduced, as we know from our experience of recently installing charging stations. So our situation's a bit different. Town of Lunenburg, kind of more condensed area, and we don't have a municipal police force per se, but we do have, obviously a much larger geography. So that being said, I think, it's important to consider that federal directive and our responsibility to reduce our own greenhouse gases, our emissions. So kind of what I took away from my discussions with him was that the type of EV also impacts whether or not it's going to be fit for purpose. So I guess, Warden, my purpose in bringing this forward was, I know we have a very robust purchasing and tendering policy. I was looking for potentially to make a motion to refer this item to staff to investigate the feasibility of gradually integrating more EVs into our public fleet vehicles, looking at it from the perspective of both GHG reduction and saving taxpayers' dollars. So that's the motion I wanted to put forward this evening, but happy to kind of have further discussion on it as well.
So you have made a motion, and we're looking for a seconder and can have some discussion on the other side of that. Seconded by Councillor Sampson. And so we're clear, we're talking about having staff explore the purchase of
Yeah, integrating more EVs into our
Integrate.
public fleet over time.
Right, okay,
So not making any kind of.
yeah. Okay. Question, discussion? Councillor Marchand?
So, Councillor Lumbercat, when you say to integrate, what kind of time period are you putting on that? Like, I'm not a big supporter of total EV, so.
So I'm not suggesting any kind of accelerated timeline. We have a capital plan now. The administration kind of keeps track of the age of our vehicles, what it's costing to maintain. I'm not suggesting anything accelerated, but just right now, the support I was looking for on the motion was to ask staff to investigate, what that could look like going forward in terms of any potential savings to taxpayers or GHG reductions. So not really looking for a decision that we're going to switch to EVs, because I don't know that that's right for us, right? So that's the purpose of the investigation.
I'm just wondering if it would be something we'd refer even to, like, at budget time, if staff could have a report ready by then. I'd be comfortable with that. Like, I'm thinking of a lot of the fleet we have is probably not going to fall into this category at this time. Like, but there are some light-duty trucks. There's half tons that the county has, right? So in that case, it may be worthwhile on some of those. Yeah.
The motion on the floor is, as discussed, to refer to staff to provide us with some information. Any other question on the motion? Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? One. Okay.
Do you like the idea of using electric vehicles or hybrids in the municipal vehicle fleet?
Well, I like the idea of saving money. So one of the things that Councillor Mumbercat flagged that's happening in Bridgewater is, there is some initial additional expense to purchasing EVs, but as you look at how that plays out with less fuel in terms of the purchases we have to make to keep those vehicles on the road, it is playing out. The concern, though, certainly is we don't want to have vehicles that don't have, that can't do what we need them to do. So I'm not at all interested in, EVs for the sake of EVs, but if EVs can serve the purpose and provide the service we need, and if they can offset, if they can pay for themselves, over the course of several years, absolutely. And I'm particularly interested in what she reported about the fact that the charging stations come with the vehicles, because what we know is that charging stations are really challenging for anybody to be able to get EVs, right? So if we can contribute to the number of charging stations, then that's win-win-win. So really all council did tonight was to just ask that in preparation for the budget, that there just be some comparison shopping where vehicles can provide the service we need. I don't think we have a ton of those vehicles, but certainly I think it would be a mistake not to start looking at that.
Councillor Mumbercat talking about the idea that the idea wasn't to have an accelerated timeline for bringing new EVs to the fleet, and pointing out that the federal deadline for removing fossil fuels from areas like this is 2035. Is this a long-term look for council, do you feel?
Well, yeah, but, keep in mind, if we want to eliminate by 2035, you'd think that your last vehicles that are not electric or are fossil burning vehicles are coming off the road in 2035. So what is the lifespan of a vehicle? How do you move back? So I know 2035 seems like forever from now, but if you look at starting to phase in vehicles so that we can start to phase out and, in fantasy, have our last fossil fuel burning vehicle phased out by 2035. I don't think, we're not looking to accelerate those processes, but the time is now to look at that.
You'd mentioned you didn't anticipate there's going to be any municipal vehicles in the fleet that would probably have to replace anytime soon, but I'm assuming there's probably some that are getting a little bit older. And when do you figure that might be that you guys might be able to make that decision whether or not to use electric vehicles or hybrids and put them in your fleet?
No, so what I meant on that actually was just that I'm not sure how many of them would work for our fleet. So there is, I believe, in the range maybe 7 or 8 vehicles, something like that. So every year at budget time, the head of Public Works has talked to us about, whether it be a truck, a van, something like that, that they're looking at replacing. And we generally try and budget one a year when possible, so that we don't end up with a year where we're spending a fortune on 3-4 vehicles. Some of them might be able to be replaced with electric vehicles, but some of these, I'm not sure if the vehicles would be readily available for some of the heavier trucks and so on. Like the F-150 Lightning, for instance, that might be great to replace some of the half tons, but maybe the heavier plow trucks and so on, it wouldn't necessarily work. But for now, this is basically asking staff to look into it a little further and see what the possibilities might be. So, I mean, it's always worth looking into to see what could work and what may work and what may not.
It almost seems like from the experience of, I believe it was Lunenburg, was that the municipality she was referring to from the NSFM fall
Maybe
conference?
as well, but I know Bridgewater, I think is what, so
Okay.
Town of Bridgewater a few years ago when I was at a policing conference, they had a Tesla police car at the time, but from what I gather, that may not have worked out to be terribly practical, but this F-150 Lightning, which, would be a much roomier vehicle. And
I believe it's a hybrid though, is it not? It's not an electric vehicle outright.
I'm not sure if it's a plug-in hybrid or the Lightnings, I believe, are fully electric as far as I know. So I'm not sure if that's any different or not, but space-wise, it's probably a lot better for them. But I wasn't speaking to the mayor directly on it myself, but I do recall when they had first gotten the Tesla, because they were pretty excited over that. But I think they learned from that what would function better for their needs.
Council also approved a motion from the District 4 councillor to request that partners, including the province of Nova Scotia and Invest Nova Scotia, be part of a joint management and planning committee for the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park.
Next issue with Councillor Mumbercat. We had some preliminary discussions, but I'm going to ask Councillor Mumbercat to speak to the exploration of joint management and planning committee for the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park. Councillor?
Thank you, Warden. And yeah, so further to the discussions that we've had, I know conversations that I've had over the last probably 6 months or more regarding management and planning for Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park. A few years back, Richmond County and the Cape Breton Partnership had done some work on branding in the park, and they've done a great job with that. I think this prospectus that they developed looks really great. If you haven't seen it, if members of the public haven't seen it, it's available if you just Google Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park prospectus, or it's on the Cape Breton Partnership's website. I think it's linked from our website. I think the link is working now. However, it's been a long-standing issue that the bottom line is that we don't own most of the lands in the park. The county doesn't. Those lands are owned by Invest Nova Scotia, formerly NSBI, and so oftentimes Richmond County doesn't really have any information about potential opportunities that emerge, or there's no, or we're unaware. There is either no future planning, or we're unaware of future planning happening to target developments to our knowledge. I think the discussion that the Cape Breton Partnership brought forward on the green cement plant is a great example of that, right? So we want to be kind of in the loop and be able to support those types of developments, because it has a direct impact on our ability to keep taxes low here in Richmond County and to generate jobs and economic growth. Further, I think over time, as certainly with our experience with some of the other activities in the park, the investment readiness of our park is of concern to me. Clear land titles, access to this, that, the other thing, different types of services, and I think those issues need to be resolved, and they can't be resolved by us without having, I think, very intentional discussions with Invest Nova Scotia and the province. I've spoken to MLA Boudreau on this in the past, and Minister Boudreau now. When I originally created this update, that was before the changes there. And he fully agreed. He's supportive of any efforts that that we would be making to better develop the park. And I guess I would maybe say, especially in his new role as Energy Minister. So. And I'm, again, happy to have more discussions on this. What I look back to, and Councillors Sampson and Sampson, I look back at the experience we had on the fire protection issue in Point Tupper. We established a council and staff team to meet with officials with the town, and within 6 months we ended up with a 10-year agreement that finally provides service stability for the park. So was hoping that we could kind of move this forward with similar urgency. I guess. So the motion I would make at this point is to authorize a staff and council team to work with the province and Invest Nova Scotia on how or if this could work, just to do some exploration and have those discussions.
And by this, you're talking about a joint management and planning committee for the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park. Deputy Warden? So the motion on the floor is to authorize staff and council to work with the province and Invest Nova Scotia on how or if a joint management and planning committee for the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park could work. It's a motion. Any discussion, question on that motion? Councillor Marchand?
Yeah. So when you're saying the joint management, you're speaking, okay, the province, and you said Invest Nova Scotia. This is just Richmond, though, dealing with these other government agencies. You're not including the town of Port Hawkesbury here when you say joint. Okay, thank you.
And thank you for that, because there is a joint industrial park with the town of Port Hawkesbury. We're talking about a joint management and planning committee, the joint being among the province, Invest Nova Scotia, and the county of Richmond. Okay. So.
Okay, what about the partnership?
Yeah, I mean, potentially.
So the motion on the floor is to authorize staff and council team to work to see if we could get one of those. I don't think we need to have an exhaustive list through this motion. It could be that staff, through their exploration of creating one, may choose to invite CBREN or any other organization. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, especially where our EDO is part of the Cape Breton Partnership, so our Economic Development Officer works directly for them,
So that would be an example of staff taking the opportunity through this process to see who else might be a good fit for that committee. Any other discussion?
Our EDO definitely works with CBREN, but are you talking the previous EDO?
No, our
Current EDO, okay.
works for the Cape Breton Partnership, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, so the motion on the floor, I'll read it again, is to authorize staff and council team to work with the province and Invest Nova Scotia on how a joint management and planning committee for the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park could work. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion is carried.
Now, do you agree about the need for joint management and planning with the province and Invest Nova Scotia? You guys identified a couple other partners, I believe, Cape Breton Partnership and the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network over Point Tupper, specifically to Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park.
Yeah, I mean, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, we had a presentation from the Economic Development Officer from CBREN about really exciting, right? So you take something as simple as green cement. Really, really interesting conversation. So whether you're talking about that or the big mega projects like Everwind and Bear Head, one of the things we know is that we need to recognize that we are poised for growth and we want to be open to growth. The best way to be open to growth is to make sure that you are investment ready. And so things like clear title, and if we don't own the land, what is the governance structure that at least keeps us in the loop? How do we know what we should be saying? Hey, come on over here, there's a piece of land owned by Invest Nova Scotia, if they have other plans for it. So what's the mechanism that makes sure that we are aware of all the things, the landowners, if it's not us, how do we loop in with them so that we know what we can post and what we can advertise and what we are open for business. We need to be able to say, here's where we have opportunities with land and here's where we have other kinds of opportunities. So I'm very much in favor of that.
Council then approved a $206,000 municipal guarantee to the Village of St. Peters to convert the former NSLC building into a multi-purpose community hub.
So the first item, Kathleen Jeffrey, Interim Director of Finance, regarding the request for municipal guarantee for the Village of St. Peters Community Hub renovation project. So you'll see on page 35 of your package, there is a memo to our CAO from the interim Director of Finance. Dear CAO, please allow this to serve as a request from the Village of St. Peters for Council to approve a loan guarantee in the amount of $206,000 for the purpose of the Village of St. Peters Community Hub renovation project. I've attached a copy of the guarantee resolution, which needs to be signed by the clerk once approved by Council and sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs for signature prior to the Village proceeding with the loan and project. I've also included some information provided by the Village. And there is some information on subsequent pages in your package, right through to page 45, information from the Village. So Deputy Warden?
So just since we had first talked about some of this details with this project, probably a couple of years back now anyway, in the time since then, I was contacted by a couple of members of the committee to look at some pricing and so on some of the work. I don't think we'll be involved in any of it going forward, but just because I was in the meantime, I'd like to declare a conflict at this time.
So Councillor Sampson, Deputy Warden Sampson has identified a conflict, and so he is leaving the room for those who can't see it at home. And so here's where we are, and we're looking for a motion to approve the loan guarantee. Do you have any thoughts? I'll make the motion to approve. Okay. So I'm actually going to read it because I want to be clear. So moved by Councillor Lumbercat that we approve a loan guarantee in the amount of $206,000 for the purpose of the Village of St. Peters Community Hub renovation project. We have a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Marchand. We've made note of the fact that the date at the very bottom should read the 16th, which it will when I read it verbatim, read it aloud. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor that has been moved and seconded. So all those in favor of that council approve a loan guarantee in the amount of $206,000 for the purpose of the Village of St. Peters Community Hub renovation project, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion is carried. Can we let the deputy know he can come back? Yeah. Okay, I guess he can stay there. So bear with me while I read the resolution. Municipality of the County of Richmond, Village Guarantee Resolution. The amount is $206,000. Village of St. Peters project is the hub renovation project, whereas the Village of St. Peters is a village situated in the municipality of the County of Richmond, whereas the Village of St. Peters has, with the approval of the electors of the village, determined to borrow the aggregate principal amount of $206,000 for the purposes of hub renovation project, whereas the Village of St. Peters has requested that the municipality guarantee said borrowing. Whereas Section 89 of the Municipal Government Act provides that the municipality may guarantee a loan for the village, and whereas Section 88(3) of the Municipal Government Act provides that no guarantee of a borrowing by a municipality shall have effect unless the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, yeah, he's not the Municipal Affairs and Housing anymore, but has approved the proposed borrowing of debenture and of proposed guarantee. Be it therefore resolved that the municipality of the County of Richmond does hereby approve the borrowing by the Village of St. Peters, the aggregate principal amount of $206,000 for the purposes set out above. That subject to the approval of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the municipality does unconditionally guarantee repayment of the principal and interest of the borrowing so made, and that upon issues of the debenture, the warden and the clerk of the municipality do sign the guarantee attached to each of the debentures and affix thereto the corporate seal of the municipality. This is to certify that the foregoing is a true copy of the resolution read and duly passed at a meeting of the Council Municipality of the County of Richmond held on the 16th day of December 2004. 2024?
Now, you mentioned about the Community Hub project in St. Peters. I assume that's the former NSLC store
Yes.
on Main Street, and maybe you guys obviously support that project, willing to support the loan guarantee, $206,000 for the St. Peters Village Commission to undertake that renovation project?
Yeah, they have been working on this for a really long time, and they have lots of ways of envisioning the use for that building. Hugely impactful for the community, includes a gym at the back, and I believe they're looking at the library, and just a lot of really, high prime real estate, great location, sidewalks coming from two different directions. So just really great project. And so if what we can do following the Municipal Government Act, allowing us to do some of the things that are required for loan guarantees, we're happy to do that because it is a good news story for St. Peter's, and what's good for St. Peter's is good for all of us.
Did it make it easier following the federal government's financial commitment to be able to say, yes, we'll provide funds for a loan guarantee?
Oh, for sure. Whenever you can see that you have gotten past the barricade of, who dishes out the dollars federally and provincially, what you know is that has been greenlit by people who are really careful about where they spend their money. So, happy to see a project getting that kind of money and that kind of investment from government, and every level of government can contribute in some way.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.